Welcome. You are at the CCC.
Where there are no outside issues. My name's Anthony. I'm an addict and an alcoholic. A seventh-year doctoral student on... seventh-year doctoral student in clinical psych. Another bozo on the bus. And apparently this is my first day on the show.
Absolutely.
I care about you. Go ahead.
And I'm LouiLou, and my pronouns are he and him. I am in recovery for crystal meth alcohol, and I am always in search of balance. And each week we will provide a brave space where we can engage in conversations around topics of recovery.
Our intention is to hold and inspire better spaces for more people in recovery by tackling issues sometimes used to separate us.
But before we do that, please like, share, and comment on this episode. Ding the bell. And please review. Give us a review.
Only give us a review if it's a good review.
No, only give us a review.
If it's a bad review, keep it to yourself.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And now the disclaimer. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on At the CCC are ours alone. We do not represent anyone but ourselves. The material and information shared here is for general information purposes only. In other words, we are just friends behind a mic here to entertain you.
Kiki.
Rickety. So it was so hard not to jump in. Like I almost tricked Lynn. Like, and I'm Bonnie Violet, trans femme. Hey, girl,
I mean, you could do it now.
That's not your cue.
Yeah. I don't know what happened at the beginning there. It's like I totally
I know what happened.
What happened?
What happened?
Oh, that's
what happened.
It got really deep.
I know,
so
exactly.
Fast.
Real quick. That's usually what we do, and it's great for a topic of sex and dating.
It is a topic for sex and dating.
Yes.
I mean, people know who you are, but just in case.
Okay. Hi, people. I'm Bonnie Violet. I'm a trans femme, genderqueer, spiritual drag artist, and digital chaplain, person living with HIV, and I've been clean and sober for 15 years.
Hey.
Hooray.
Hey.
So let's start. Anthony, how are you doing? Obviously, tongue.
Get out of here. Oh my God. I don't even know what to do with myself.
Will you tell us how you are?
That feels so
That's what
sweet.
you do.
You're like, well, you follow the instructions. That's what you do. Today I'm a little stressed out. I have, my first deadlines are November 1st. So I have 8 applications that are due November 1st. So I'm wrapping up my cover letters and all that other stuff. So, I've been, pretty stressed out, but I'm surrounded by a lot of loving people and I have a lot of support. So, that's where I'm at. I just had a delicious chicken sandwich.
Oh, that was amazing.
Yeah. I had chicken sliders from across the street. I'd say their name, but we probably shouldn't. Well, I don't know what.
We should get them to sponsor us first.
Yeah.
We're going to need some money.
Yeah. But yeah, thank you for, what did you say? No savies?
I said no freebies.
No freebies. But yeah, thank you for asking.
No fronts.
No fronts.
No fronts. How are the two of you?
I'm good. We had I was telling you before, it felt like a really long time since we were last here. We had the Harvest Feast. It's the yearly kind of gala for the country club, where it's an opportunity for folks to come together, talk about the accomplishments, celebrate Brandon and Billy's, and just everybody, and honor folks, and honor the hell out of folks.
It was my first time.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. The theme was
great.
Broadway. And
Broadway
it was
musicals,
interesting.
yeah.
Broadway musicals is really interesting to see all people's takes on and whatever. But the one thing I will tell you is okay, so I didn't dress up like anybody from an actual musical. And of course, the question is, who are you supposed to be? And I hate that. When you dress up on Halloween or you go to a costume party and somebody comes up, I think without knowing, or maybe knowing, folks are really just trying to diminish you or take something away from you.
Probs, yeah.
I just made mine up.
Yeah, no, exactly.
I was I'm Kit Kat dancer number 3, the tranny person living with HIV, the one dancing next to Mimi in the Kit Kat Club in Rent.
Yeah.
That was
I
me.
just told everybody that I was going to pick up a Tony, and I'd been in most of the shows anyway, so it's
I thought about I'm just somebody who would love to go to a Broadway show. This is what I would wear.
I love that. Oh, hey, Stephanie.
Oh, you all look so. Thank you,
Oh,
Stephanie.
thank you,
I love
Stephanie.
that.
That's very sweet. Yeah, the gala was the gala was a lot of fun. It was nice to have a bunch of people together. I also enjoyed seeing people's costumes. I think
And Anthony was our MC.
I was the MC this year.
How do you feel about that?
I was very nervous beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was really nervous beforehand. Mostly because I was in my head because previous years, like all the MCs have been incredible. They've all been great.
Have they?
Well, in my opinion, oh girl, okay. I don't know what to do.
Saying, I'm just saying because it's like you're comparing yourself to previous years and
well, let me
Okay,
yeah, let me finish my thought. What I wanted to say is, yeah, I was like, we started. It's not even 5 minutes. In. What I wanted to say is that I was very flattered to have been asked, and so I just wanted to do it justice. And by like talking about previous years, like I just thought they all did a great job, and so I wanted to do a good job. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. My partner and I prayed beforehand, and like between speakers, he like would rub my back and like, calm me down because I was so anxious the whole time, but
You did great.
thank you. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. So today's, Bonnie Violet, did he tell us how you're doing?
I didn't.
Oh, let's
I was
hear
just
it.
waiting for somebody to ask me. No.
Well,
sorry.
go ahead.
That's what you two have in common.
I don't-
It's always
well, I
like
figured I was
trying to shame me.
The
It's
last one I needed to.
how am I doing?
I was just trying to jump in, try to fit into the group.
You're doing a great job.
But
Yeah.
I'm a little emotional. I have a little bit of emotional hangover
From the summit?
from doing the summit this weekend. But it was a fantastic weekend. I definitely relate to feeling like it's been a long time since we were here a week ago.
yeah.
So we can leave it at that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations on another successful year. That's
Absolutely.
2 years now.
That's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah.
You're not a one hit wonder.
No, maybe 3 hits. Next year we'll do Toronto, but there's already talks about the 2025 too. So.
Oh, hey, that's how it's got to be.
Yep.
Let's go.
Thank you for sharing that.
Bam,
Brandon.
dragonspirituality.com.
Thank you, Brandon.
Yes, thank you.
Brandon's on top.
So for folks who are listening, if you want to read more about the Dragon Spirituality Conference, Brandon, put it back up so I can say it out loud. https://dragonspirituality.com/
And it was nice of you all to let us use the podcast equipment. It really helped the summit
That's
be heard,
like actually
heard.
Yeah.
Yes. So thank you.
Of course. So today's topic is sex and dating in recovery. Sex and dating recovery.
Yeah.
Don't you have that little sound machine over there?
Yeah. I know. I was like, I feel like that's a good opportunity for sound.
Yeah, exactly.
Brandon, yeah, that was good. Next time a little sooner, yeah?
Maybe there was spices in that chicken.
Yeah. I'm like, there is something going on with like the energy right now. You know, you're in San Francisco, or you've been living in the East Bay or San Francisco for a long time when you say things like that. Like, oh, the energy here feels, insert word.
Or when you're trying to be shady, I'm all, there's something going on. What's this? What's happening?
So today's topic is sex and dating and recovery.
And when we first mentioned it, I think looking back on the topic, we had talked about sex and dating in early recovery, but there was a need for some clarification. And I was thinking, if it's just sex and dating in recovery, then we can talk about all of that.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about whatever happens.
Maybe let's
as
just
we do.
As we do, yeah.
I'll moderate for a minute. Let's just start with early recovery.
Yeah,
And then
I love
work
that.
on it.
Let's start with early recovery. Let's start with early recovery. Sorry, I just almost took another left turn. Well, because I was thinking about like before recovery. So but early recovery, y'all have some stories on top of your mind, like front of mind?
Yeah, I mean,
If by dating you mean just having sex, then I have some stories. Otherwise, I am going to just chime in where I can.
Well, you know what's coming up for me is I'm thinking about how sometimes I'll go and I'll listen to previous episodes and we'll have topics where there's so much to talk about and we'll say we'll come back to them and we don't come back to them.
Of course not.
But I was thinking that like sex and dating is one of those topics that has come up a lot, and so I feel like there's always so much to talk about.
Yeah.
But I think dating, both of those things like changed for me, obviously, before and after, but I feel like there was a lot of like old behavior in the very beginning, like, I don't know. How do y'all decide who to talk to and date, like at least in early recovery versus now?
Well, before I got into recovery, I was a bit of a serial monogamist.
I see.
I was always in a relationship, and that was really important to me. It was always a toxic, not great relationship, especially the final one that really kind of took me to my bottom. I think that really pushed me to get sober a little bit. But I think it also depends on what you're in recovery from, because I know CMA has a little bit different mentality around maybe sex in early recovery, whereas where I got sober in Idaho, my sponsor very much kept telling me I needed to get laid.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, I don't want to. And then he's like, no, you should, it'll be okay. And I was like, no, I really don't want to. And then I was a few months into recovery, and I remember I dropped $100 and some for an eHarmony account or something. And I told him, and
wow.
he's like, girl, I told you to have sex. I didn't tell you to date.
Interesting.
You ain't ready for that. I was like, I just spent $100 and some.
Yeah. You're like, well, I'm dating now.
Right. No, I just didn't do it. I think in early recovery, I really didn't want to, I didn't know what to do. I was happy with the results that I was getting in early recovery, and I just kind of did what was suggested to me for the most part, because I had really just come to resign to the idea that I didn't know what was best for me. Yeah. And that's not to say that I was just okay, whatever you say, I do. But I definitely was willing to think that that doing something different was really what I was looking for, because I wanted different results. And my sexual relationships, my last relationship, the guy punched me in the face.
Oh my God.
He stalked me. There was a lot of just, it was just really not cute. And so I really didn't mind separating myself from that sort of situation either.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. That's horrible. Yeah.
I think we should clarify. Okay. So we all experience 12-step, and I think there's a misconception that there's just this hard, fast rule that you can't have sex or be in a relationship until you get to a year of recovery. It's a suggestion.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
It's a suggestion. And what I do, as long as I've sponsored, and I've never had a sponsor tell me not to, but as long as, when I'm working with individuals who are especially brand new, the way that I preface it, because I also knowing me and how I feel about relationships, I want to show up in the most objective way that I can. And so the way that I present it is early recovery is challenging as it is. And when you decide that you want to date or even just have sex or whatever, the challenge is that you have to take someone else into consideration. And so usually early recovery is an opportunity for you to kind of be a little selfish, to focus in on you. There is absolutely nothing wrong, but it's you get to check your motive as you go. And again, you have to take someone else into consideration.
Yeah, well, I think you start to, at least for me, I started to recognize the difference between sex and dating, that they can be different things, right? That especially the way that I was.
If they're not obsession, because I think
right.
the distinction is if they are distinctly different things and you're doing them in a healthy way, whatever that means. But I usually think a lot of times early on, there's an obsessive component to how people are showing up in those two areas.
I didn't have sex, or I wasn't in relationships. I was in a relationship when I first got sober, so there was a little sex in a relationship. But once that was done, I was kind of just done.
Yeah.
At least my first year, I remember.
Yeah. So it's interesting because when we talk about the suggestion of no dating and sex in the vegan in early recovery, I've been of the opinion for quite some time that if it isn't in the big book, it's people are making shit up. Except that I will say that one of the things that I've noticed, and I think we've talked about this before, is that the only thing I can think of, at least biologically, the dangers of dating and sex in early recovery is that when a person is withdrawing from substances, they will often go stimulation seeking. And so it's very easy to do that with sex and with dating. And so I can see that being the reason why, but I don't know if that's why people make that suggestion.
Well, I think sometimes it's hard for people to put them in their recovery first when they're in a relationship, especially early on, because you're still, at least my feeling is you're still kind of figuring out what your part is and where you begin and where the rest of the world begins. And so I think I've noticed that sometimes it seems like, and oftentimes in early recovery, they say anything you put in front of your recovery, you could lose. You know what I mean, I think it can happen maybe, or I mean, that can happen anytime.
Yeah. Like this is my own thing. But I feel like just as a general rule, it's probably a good idea not to date someone unless they've done their 4th and 5th step, because I feel like that's when people are really starting to look at their own stuff and they're starting to basically like develop some awareness around like their part in interpersonal relationships. I wanted to go back a little bit because I think part of like what can make dating. Did I say gating?
I thought you said gating.
That's hilarious.
A new thing.
It's probably the like leftover chicken stuck in my mouth. There's like, you know how sometimes like things get lodged into your gums and you don't know until like 11 p.m.
I've never had anything.
Is that gross?
I've never had anything lodged in my mouth that made me change the
pronunciation.
Are you sure about that?
Yeah, but like
maybe a
Sure
dick.
about that?
Yeah.
Right.
There we go. There we go.
Okay.
There we go.
Yes.
God, what the hell was I going to say? So I think part of the complication in talking about dating is like, what are we calling dating?
Yeah.
Right? I think so. And I say that because of the work that I've done in SLAW and Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous is like getting clarity around what does it mean to actually date someone. So for some people, hooking up is dating.
Yeah.
That can be like conceived as dating. Yeah. So I think that's part of it too. I think it's like when I think about like sex and dating in general, like in recovery, and the same ways that we have like our own conception of a higher power, so too can we like what sex and dating looks like. And I think those things only become kind of problematic when they don't serve us. So it's like,
Absolutely.
This is what I'm calling dating, but I always end up heartbroken or, I always end up relapsing.
Yeah. This is, it's early on. It's super important that the conversation be had between the sponsee and their sponsor. Because I think one of the things that I can just speak about my relationship with certain sponsees where I used to have to try to encourage them to see that taking a little break from something doesn't mean that you stop altogether. Yeah. But it's like, if it's problematic and you're not willing to look at it because you're so concerned about like wanting to be in a relationship, then that's a problem.
Yeah.
Or wanting to be in a sex situation. I don't know.
Right. Well, and I think in the beginning, what kind of falls along that too is like some of us are already in relationships, like we're married or we're in certain circumstances. And I remember just being told not to make any really big changes unless you have to, and that's so like relationships or new jobs or big moves or like to really do those sorts of things to really like. Usually if it's being done, it's because like it has to done because of like safety or, what I mean? Some other sort of reason. Yeah.
And I think that falls in line with the stimulation seeking, like all of that stuff. I feel like as an aside, I think one of the things we don't talk about in recovery is, so I'm thinking about, there's so much coming up for me. So related to all of this, I'm just thinking about what it feels like to get sober in early recovery and how, at least for me, for example, I had like all the feelings and all the thoughts because, you took away the drugs and the alcohol and then I was like left with myself. And so that there's like this little biological process that people go through and there are ways that people try to cope with those biological processes. And the things that I feel like we don't really have language for directly are like, like people will sometimes overeat or they'll overspend or they'll date or they'll have like a lot of sex or they'll do all of this stuff in early recovery. And I feel, like we hear that in people's shares on the floor, but there isn't much like, I feel like there's nothing that like points to it directly. And that, do you know what I'm trying to say here?
Well, yeah. Mm-hmm. But I feel like also, at least my feeling is that sex isn't usually lumped into that label, because I feel like there's like
Which label?
in early recovery, like you have grace if you shop a little extra, or you eat a little wonky, or you like whatever, like or you smoke. They say, you can just do that later or whatever. But sex, for whatever reason, has more of an opinion typically.
Yeah, of course.
Versus all that other stuff.
It's talked about in the big book, right?
Yeah, because everybody brings their experience and their like criticisms or whatever they have about sex.
Yeah,
and it's the same thing. It's
I love the way the big book talks about it. Like basically in the big on page 69, basically it says people are extreme. Either people want a lot of it or people want nothing part of it. Actually, I had dinner with two of my sponsees recently, and they actually represent that spectrum.
I love it.
You know what I mean? They represent that kind of spectrum, and I thought like, oh, that's so interesting. Anyway, where are we going? So dating, sex. Oh, we were talking about that sex is normally not lumped in. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. It's kind of treated as this even more like taboo and kind of more rules. Like it's a special area, if you will, in early recovery.
Yeah.
At least if we're thinking about, and from my experience with dealing with like alcohol or drug recovery, it might be a little bit different, obviously, like in SLAA or maybe other recovery programs that
we start to have conversations. I know, I'm sure you guys, we start to have conversations about like how, I would say like in early recovery, when I came in, I knew exactly what the issues were. And when I started to address them, my addiction is so insidious, it starts to become a little more nuanced. It'll spill out into something else, and it spills out into how I show up sexually, how I show up eating wise, all of those things. And so I think that it's still an issue that because we don't see, let me not say we, I bring my past experience with sex and sexuality and all that good stuff, and I think I've approached when someone's acting out maybe sexually a lot differently than if someone's acted out, eating a lot or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
I think there's historical context for that. Like I think this is like a really good example of how culture informs some of the opinions we have, because I think about. Obviously we're like LGBT plus podcasts and the fellowships we tend to be in are LGBT plus. And so I think part of that has to do with like the history of the HIV/AIDS epidemic. And then, just like the awareness that I think our community has around like sexuality and, there's
sexual liberation.
Yeah. Like sexual liberation and it just kind of reconceptualizing that. And so I think I'm just speculating, but maybe that has to do with why there's more conversation around that, at least in what I'll call queer recovery, because when I've been in like straight sober spaces, I don't hear them talk about it.
But they
often.
They create a lot more boundaries and like within the process,
with like the gender,
like men can only be with women and women can only be men, and specifically so they don't fuck.
And also in AA specifically, like they don't talk about like sex as much. Like it's quite common in CMA.
Oh yeah,
and to me, my perception in coming into CMA after AA was like it feels like it's encouraged for people in early CMA recovery to have sex with other people in early CMA recovery. But to me, my understanding was that is so that you can begin to learn what it's like to have sober sex and to do it in a way in which that's.
I didn't get that.
That's so interesting. Yeah.
To start on.
I didn't get that, but what I got more from that is that I believe that there's a amount of time that you set it on the shelf, but you can't do it forever.
Yeah,
like it's an issue that you're going to have to address at some point. Like. If I had known early on that I should have sex with other people and see him, no, honestly.
I mean, that was just my perception is kind of, because I feel like I pop in and out of CMA.
I think that you got a snapshot of a really toxic meeting.
No, I mean, I'm sorry, like that was my understanding of like San Francisco specific, like CMA, like that's what I had heard and I don't know if that was just maybe new people wanting to get in my pants. I
feel like no, you're right, but I feel like there are some folks in that fellowship that think that way because they have a very kind of free relationship with sex and sexuality.
But there's also like going to the bathhouse together or going
all those meetings.
Okay, there's a specific meeting that celebrates kink, and that's what they do. I would.
But there's no
I know
early
that I have
people.
no control. Huh?
But early people go to that too.
I would discourage till the cows come home because I think
Cows. I'm
what
just joking.
no, for me
That's another meeting.
Okay, so for me,
No?
I always have this. I always have this concern. Like, okay, so say you get right with something, and you're good with it, and when you're good with it, you're all passionate about it. But sometimes you can be blind to the fact that
totally.
other people aren't there yet, and I think that's kind of what I saw in that specific meeting. And I want to celebrate the meeting, but I also want folks to. I want to.
mindful.
I can show up if folks are being responsible, and that's why there was a new sex meeting that's an AA meeting that's here at the club. And what I really liked about it is it came from a place of let's talk about the recovery. Let's bring our higher power into this. We can get to a place. We can get to that place with all of those things, but we got some work to do. And I think that's maybe the message in all of this. Underneath it is like put it on hold. So you can do the work because it's not going anywhere.
Sex isn't going.
Maybe
Go
we can
ahead,
talk
Bonnie,
about
darling.
sex not in early recovery.
I
then.
mean, I don't even. So
what does it develop into? What can it look like?
what sex and dating and recovery? Well, I
Obviously,
Look at- this is how
multiple
bad-
partners.
Well, this is how my ADHD is so bad. I wrote this down because I was going to write notes next to it,
Sex,
and then I forgot to write the
dating.
notes. I wrote sex.
Because this is such a juicy.
I always wonder what you're writing.
Oh,
and now I can
they're my
see
notes.
it's-
Yeah.
yeah.
But
It
so
was so much grander in my
He's
head.
writing love notes.
It was so much grander in my head.
yeah. What was I gonna say? Yeah, they're just like single words, so I don't
Totally,
forget
no,
things.
I get it.
I love this idea of bringing in God into dating and bringing God
totally.
into sex. I think one of the worst things. I don't even know if I believe this. I don't know if I believe what I'm about to say. So one of the worst things that I feel like I could have been told in early recovery, which no one told me this. It was someone who shared it. In fact, it was in this room, and I was
Which
sitting
chair?
3 seats back, and it was up here. And it's a person who no longer lives here. He lives in Sacramento, but he was saying that he fucked his way through his first 5 years of recovery, and that's how he stayed sober. I heard that shit and I ran with it.
yes.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh, I can do that.
I've heard that before too. Some people who still say that.
Yeah, and what ended up happening is I ended up realizing I had another addiction, or I don't know if I developed it, but so the reason why I don't know if I believe what I'm saying is because what if that's what I needed to have happen?
And
you know what I mean?
It
And
was.
Well,
to
maybe
some
you
degree,
need,
right?
maybe you needed it.
Yeah, I mean, that's what
maybe
I
you
mean.
needed it to figure out that you needed another program. So I think think
Yeah.
that Rule 62. There's no rules. That
Yeah.
like as much as I want to, like especially now that I've had some time in recovery, the issue with I've had sponsees who come in relationships that are toxic, sponsees who come in relationships that are amazing. Not everybody has an
Yeah.
issue with this,
Can-
and I think
yes, 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 yes,
I
yes,
think
yes.
it's I think. When
I
we
wanna
do
write
the
on
work
your
to get when we do the work to get to know each other, to find that intimacy, to find that connection or whatever,
Yeah.
and we find out that there's not, and each individual, I take a different approach because we got to. I mean, I'm not a therapist, but I get to focus in on what I need to focus in on, and the other stuff. If it's not a problem, I'm not going to go look for a problem and try to create one there.
Yeah, I went to this meeting. So over the course of 2 days, my mind has started to shift around some of this stuff. So I hung out with 2 of my sponsees yesterday, and they represent different
The lollipop guild.
parts. Well, I have 3 of them, but they represent I see what you just did. I would have written that down, Bonnie, by Lollipop Guild, look up. So,
I know what it is.
but I look up for myself, but I know who they are. So don't pull me off topic. So I was with my 2 sponsees, and I noticed that they like I said, they represent extremes of each other, right? And what's interesting is that because they represent extremes of each other, their personalities are kind of complementary to that, not to each other, but they're complementary. And so like later on that day, like I was at home and I was thinking to myself like, oh, like that's what it looks like. You know what I mean? Like this is what it looks like to like live like such like this way and this way. I'm being judicious with my words. So to this morning, I went to a morning meeting and they were talking about a psychic change. And I think my psychic change around a lot of this stuff, and this is what I love about the big book, is that my struggle with things are my struggles with things. And that what other people do is none of my business. And if I am like wrapped up in other people's business, like there's something going on for me, right? And so when I think about like my dating or like my sexual behavior, like my history brought me to those things, you know, and for whatever reason. And like how I show up to those situations is also unique to me. Right. And so similarly, like I think I also have to bring grace to, hey, we're using grace. Not that you have like ownership of that word, but like anytime it's brought up, we like Bonnie Violet always talks about grace.
She never shuts up about it.
Oh my God, all she ever wants to talk about is grace this and grace that. And I got a dog and I named her Grace. So what I was just thinking, wow. Yeah, I don't know what this is. It's so hot.
It is.
But I think where I'm getting with this is that like, I think another way of saying is like, it's none of my business is that no one fucking knows anything. You know what I mean? Like no one really, I think, you know, the reason why we have suggestions is because maybe like collectively we've like witnessed certain behaviors and certain patterns. And we're like, hey girl, like most of the time when people go down that street, they don't come back, you know? Right. But no one really knows, you know?
Yeah.
Exactly. I love that place, that place when you have that spiritual awakening around, it's none of my business, or I don't get to interject my thoughts onto your humanity or what you're about. An experience connected to that recovery and going to conferences and things like that. I used to go, and when I was in judgment on what other people were doing, and I felt like, oh, there's so much sexual energy and people are there for the wrong reasons and all that good stuff. And then all of a sudden it shifted. And it shifted when I realized I get to go and decide what I'm going to get from this. If I want to go and hook up the whole time, I can do that. If I want to go and not hook up. And when I got to that place, I realized those conferences aren't overly sexual. I was overly focused on other people's shit and missing out on paying attention to what was important to me.
Oh yeah. I mean, I had a conversation with my partner not too long ago about, man, that I had to, I don't know if I'm going to share this one. Oh, maybe I will. Just a little bit of it. But there was like, so one
tread lightly.
Yeah. Well, actually, I don't know. Well, I've already started. But I'll share in a general way. Okay.
That's what we do at meetings.
What it was like. So basically, we were having this conversation where I basically, without knowing it, was superimposing my own ideas onto him. And then I stopped myself and I'm like, oh my God, this has nothing to do with you. And this is 100% my own shit. And I'm lucky, like I feel fortunate in that like I caught myself.
He's really good at calling you on that shit, huh?
Well, I feel like
in a loving way.
Well, yeah, I mean, our communication is like very good. And I think we do have like the type of relationship where we can do that kind of stuff. But what I appreciate, and then I'll stop kind of singing our praises. What I appreciate is that we're pretty good. Well, we're pretty good at doing that for ourselves. Okay. So we don't really need to do that for each other. Okay. Anyway, I don't know. Yeah. I just love it so much.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, some of what, kind of to go back to some of what was being said, was just like around harm reduction and progress, not perfection. You know, with that idea, like maybe like when you talked about 5 years of whatever, you know, like maybe that's the progress, not the perfection that gets you to whatever. And it is very, very relative. And I think we do have to be mindful of like, are we lying to ourselves? Which I think is something that you were talking about earlier on, was that idea of, you know, like, am I just fooling myself into thinking that this is progress or this is good for me, when in actuality it's not. There was something else I was going to bring up.
Oh, did you want me to write? I wrote fear, my thinking, controlling behavior.
I know. I was holding on to progress, not perfection, and harm reduction for a while.
Well, you know what I will say, if we don't talk about this at all, I think that we are very fortunate in that when we come in, you know, I always encourage people to find their tribe. and we learn how to be with each other in healthy ways. And I think that it is in that we learn how to be in relationship with others, in love relationships or whatever. I think that, that I always say the song, this one's connected to that one or whatever. When we think we're not doing the work, we're doing the work.
Right.
We're doing the work, learning how to show up. Like, first off, learning how to show up for myself. How do I view me and my worth? And as long as like, for me, I don't know about y'all, but like, when I get to a place where I'm super passionate about what I'm passionate about for me, it challenges me to see that other people have every right to be that way for themselves. And then that way you get to show up in a way where I'm like thoughtful and caring, and I want to know and learn and love about you. And isn't that what being in a relationship is about? It's not about like compromising yourself, but compromising, and being. Like I say to my sponsors, you got to take other people into consideration, and want it, and not in a way that's laborious or whatever. I'm using big words,
right?
But where you want to do it, where it's wonderful, and it's like it's something that adds to you. It's like a bonus. It's not.
Well, what you're making me think of is what it feels like for me to feel connected to a power greater than myself. Okay, let me try to make this less abstract. But so one of the gifts of recovery is that I have a better sense of when my body is responding addictively to something, right? So like sometimes what that means, like with the obsession of the mind, like if I find myself like constantly going to something in my head or constantly going to something in my body and being controlled by it, like I have a better sense of that now, where I'm like, like for example, like the recent thing for me has been like sugar. Like for the last few days, I consume so much sugar late at night, and I know it's addiction because I can't stop thinking about it and I need to consume it. Right?
I just have this vision of you in a funnel.
Well, for me, it's like boba. It's like boba or ice cream. Anyway, so that's been one of the gifts of recovery. And I think like getting that internal sense of what addiction feels like, I can apply to so many different things, including sex and dating.
And when is it addiction and when is it just our humanity? Because I think to be human is to be an addict. Like, I think that's what makes us not God.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I think. Brene Brown, I can't believe I just brought her up. But it's been a while. But
I know. I haven't talked to her about her.
But Brene Brown talks about that, where she talks about how like we're basically all addicted to stuff, and how like,
well, especially Americans and America in general.
America, fuck yeah. But it's about wanting to and the addiction, because who doesn't want to be relieved of discomfort, Right, yeah. And there, I think there is an element of that's okay. It's the balance of it, 100%.
If you can balance, I think the challenge
100%,
is like, everything is good in moderation.
But even if it gets wonky, it gets wonky. Like, we adjust.
And if
exactly.
Wonky
an okay word to use.
If you're able to pull back, like, I think that the beauty for me for recovery now is like I can go off the deep end, but as long as I know I have tools to kind of find my way back.
Well, I remember when earlier you said, sorry.
No, it's fine.
Earlier you said something like, that people just made that up. One of the rules.
I said that if it's not in the big book.
But the big book is made up too.
Yeah, girl, you know what I'm saying.
It's all made up.
Yeah.
I know. I just but I mean, I think just to kind of bring that back to the idea that like it's all, but also in the things that are made up does not mean that it's not valid or it's not helpful.
Of course, yeah, of course.
And so wisdom is when we're able to kind of take a lot of different information,
absolutely,
emotions, our personal experience, maybe other people's experience, and then moving forward with that. So I think there's a lot of wisdom in potentially in all of that.
I think I think it's a great start. The big book is a great start, but then you go beyond
amazing.
and figure out.
Yeah.
Well, I mean it reminds me of my sponsor said to me years ago, that the steps are there to clear the path between you and God, and once that path is cleared, then you're doing, what I mean? Like, that's between you. I forget what I was thinking about, but I was thinking about obsession of the mind, allergy of the body. I don't remember. Fear. No, not fear.
So I was going to...
Go ahead.
Maybe if you
go ahead.
Just shut me up. So the work that I do with my sponsor now, like we started out with the steps and with the traditions and really kind of a prescribed kind of relationship to the big book and everything. Mm-hmm. And now what we do is like everything we do, we bring our experience as recovered men to it, our discussion. And so it does not matter what we read. It does not have to be an AA approved literature. Like I was saying, we read How to Be an Anti-Racist, the 4 Agreements, just a number of different things. And we brought our experience to that. And it's really nice because what it's done is it's opened me up in a way where, we talk about practicing the principles in all our affairs, but living it is the challenge. It's like I'm all living it and saying that everything I do is my recovery.
I remembered. So now a comment about the big book. So I feel like the big book or like the 12 steps are really good, or rather the big book is really good at stopping the bleeding, right? But like if you're going to live like a fuller life, you can't just like read the big book, like there's actual work that you have to do and it's ongoing. That was my first thought. Then my second thought was to your point about, like we're all addicts essentially. Like, I think this is covered like really well when we talk about like the 4th step, and the way it's described in the big book is basically that, we all have human instincts, and it's when we exceed our human instincts. It's when we want more than our fair share. Yeah. And I think that can be applied to obviously so many different things, but sticking to topic, if we're talking about sex and dating, it's like how much, like what exactly does that look like? You know what I mean? And is it kind of taking you, is it compromising your serenity or your or your peace of mind, which I don't know. And again, like, we don't know, who knows, you know what I mean? And one of the things my sponsor always says is like years ago, she was saying to me, she's like, we don't really know what we want or need. Yeah. We don't really know what we want or need.
That's part of the process.
Yeah. We don't really know what we want or need. And I remember saying to her, but I don't want anyone to lie to me. And she's like, but what if it's it's someone's lie that gets you to, what I mean? And so,
yeah. Well, and I think that's kind of the journey. It's like, you have to keep going. Like maybe initially that saying you go to the hardware store to get a gallon of milk, and you become more interested. You really explore what it is that I'm looking for. And maybe it wasn't even a gallon of milk to begin with that you were wanting to get. And really and that's maybe a horrible analogy, but this idea of getting better at knowing what it is that you really want or desire or need, and actually really knowing what that is, and then being able to actually match that with something that can give you that versus, settling.
So what you're saying is you have to do in order to figure that out.
You do. Yeah. I think so. I think it is a process of elimination, right?
Yeah, no,
and exploration, and in order to figure that out.
What I've been trying to do with my sponsees especially is because I'm going through this without going into detail. I'm going through something very related to this topic, and this individual's in early recovery, and I'm all, you know what? Just be open to having a conversation about it. If you're doing things and you're doing things in the dark, that's when you get to ask yourself, what's going on? I want you to feel comfortable enough to talk about it, because number one, I like to say, I don't get to judge. I don't get to tell you what to do. You're an adult.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about it. But if you're doing it and you're not talking about it, you might be feeling some sort of way about it, and then that's when you get to talk about
Suppression, repression, lying about those kind of behaviors is really harmful. But I think...
Go ahead.
I think also one of the things that, if you are finding yourself in that spot, especially around, sexual behaviors or sexual things, I know for me, I had a lot of sexual, kink desires or experiences that I was really trying to suppress because for some reason I just thought they weren't cute. But I still did them, and then I would feel some sort of way about it. And so I eventually kind of just decided, I'm going to get curious. Why is it that I have this desire, and what is it that I'm looking for from this? Is it helpful? Is it useful? And trying to be a little bit more curious about it and talk with other people about it, kind of bring some light to it versus, trying to fight it, because then usually I fight it. And then once it actually happens, I'm not prepared for what's actually going to happen. And then that leads to, I think, potential harm to myself and potentially to other people because, things aren't clearly communicated or whatever.
Yeah, you're making me think of, regardless of what the thing is that grips us, but the things that grip us, you know, like whether it's an idea or a feeling, whether it's like more specific things like shame or anger or happiness or love. Like there are all these things that kind of grip us, and I should speak for myself, but these things that grip me and can pull me off center, and how I think one of the difficulties in talking about something like a God is like this idea of, you know, is there truth with a capital T, and is that what we're all trying to get to, you know, and how do we get to that? And I think maybe what's happening in conversation for us right now, at least today, is that we're realizing that there's so many different ways to get to whatever that capital T is, if there is a capital T.
Totally.
I think we need to start wrapping up.
Yeah, long. Like,
Louis, did you just do this?
Well, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I'm playing with my
Wrap
thing.
it up.
Oh no, I thought that was you telling me to wrap it up.
The Castro Country Club is a safe and sober community center for all people and a refuge for the LGBT recovery community.
We provide programs and services that help people change their lives by supporting personal growth.
Our vision is to reduce the suffering of addiction by connecting people to opportunity, community, and support.
You can find more information, including all of the ways to contact us at www.castrocountryclub.org /. Did I get it right?
That's right.
Podcast. Yeah.
Nice.
Tune in every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time when we go live on our Castro Country Club Facebook and YouTube channels. Brandon, before you do anything, I also wanted to give a shout out to Amanda Ireland Esquivel. I think her name is Esquivel. Esquivel from True Colors Recovery. I think she recently came to visit us. I think it was today. But anyway, we wanted just to say what's up to Amanda. Shout out to everyone over at True Colors Recovery in Portland. We love you. And we have one more thing on the screen.
You can find us wherever you listen to podcasts. Please rate and subscribe.
Yes. Absolutely.
And we're still recording.
All right.
Brandon,
Let's
can you
talk
turn off the
about
lights?
Sex,
Please.
baby.
It's just on you and me. Let's talk about all the good
We're going to
things.
turn out all the lights.
Yeah.
And
You want to
talk.
see my cat? This is how the picture
We're
originally
recording, right,
was.
still?
Yeah, we are.
Okay.
Doesn't he? He's adorable.
He is adorable.
He was like, Dad.
So
How was that?
that was wild.
That was all over the place.
Yeah. Well, no,
It's-
I don't think it
Not
was
good all over the place.
But you know, I think okay, great. We started where we started, but really, like, it's a journey. It's
It
a
is.
journey that doesn't look the same for everybody.
yeah.
And so it is kind of
And
all
it
over
can
the place.
change. It's
Yeah.
like as soon as you think you figure it out, and maybe that thing was good for then, but then things change, and then you get to find out what is different and new that's good for you. And so I think it's important to not. So I think it can be really easy for us to judge the way things once were, or even where we're at right now, because we want something different versus just saying like, this is what it has been. And it's not really feeling the way that it used to. And now it's time for me to, explore or find something else.
Where's that sound coming from?
Is it church? God?
Where is that?
Is God ascending?
That's that it reminds me of the fourth step again, because I'm thinking about like the things that bother me. But okay, so one of the things I discovered in my fourth step is how sometimes I have a resentment when I'm expecting other people to take care of me without realizing that that's what I'm wanting them to do. And sometimes that can show up in my having like inflammatory opinions about things, where, for example, maybe I have an insecurity about something. And so rather than deal with my insecurity, I will have an opinion that essentially attempts to control somebody else's behavior.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Jesus Christ, why is that so loud?
Well, it gives us a nice little ambiance, I guess.
Jeez.
I know, it's like booming.
It's kind of like your roommate does when they have a guest over, right?
Oh my God, that's really loud. Hold on. Oh, you know what? I don't know why it's louder with my headphones on.
Is it louder in the phones?
It doesn't matter.
I
I
always
don't know.
put one on and one off, so
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
why
I thought
do
you
that.
did that because you're cool.
Well, and partially because I want to show off my earrings.
Oh.
You know.
Work.
Why put And we did.
What?
Yeah.
I feel like we might be wrapping up early today because this is a lot.
Yeah. Well, I was.
It's also really hot.
Yeah. I guess I was curious that I was like, I thought I would get to the point of like, because I don't guess it's like what my sex life is now or dating is now, and it's non-existent.
Interesting.
You know, and
That's-
it hasn't
that
been.
happens, yeah.
It hasn't been for almost 3 years, which is very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think my first. But I haven't really dated a lot in recovery though. Period. I fucked a lot.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've
Prior to 3 years
I fucked
ago.
my way through most of the last 5 years.
And I'm at a point where I don't want that sort of sexual, you know, and I have thought about like, I have like, and I think when I said, you know, it's hard not to like look back on our past and think like, oh, maybe that wasn't so cute or whatever. And so I think there's still an element of that at times where I'm like, the more I look at how it doesn't suit me now, I want to feel like, was it suiting me then? And really, it doesn't matter.
You know, I was thinking about that earlier for myself. The same process for me about like, did I need all of those experiences? I mean, hindsight always 2020, but like, did I need all of those experiences to get to where I am? Which I guess to some degree, like I am, and not that one is like preferential, I guess. But I don't know. I think basically where I am with this is like obviously like I'm in a relationship and my sex life looks very different now.
He's in a relationship?
I know, guys, I do
I'm
bring
so
it up or
I'm
not.
so
I know.
Yeah.
I know. I'll stop.
No, go
you
ahead.
can't.
It's such a big part of my life.
No, talk about it.
No,
Yeah,
not
you know
anymore.
I wasn't meaning
No,
to.
I don't wanna talk about
I wasn't
it.
meaning
You know
to
what,
shit
you,
your
honey-
mouth. I
No.
just was.
You just
I
say
was
shit in my mouth.
I was just trying to encourage you.
Oh, God, you know what we're doing?
What?
We're picking on him.
Yeah.
No, it was not meant to be with that at all.
No, it's fine. Yeah.
It wasn't meant to be.
But what I want to say, well, we're talking. This is pertinent.
It
It
totally
is
is.
personal.
So-
and you just have to be okay with the looks when you.
Yeah, but I guess what I want to say is, I never in a million years thought that I would be like where I am around this kind of stuff.
You've done the work, though, girl.
I
Girl. I mean, we've
A little
heard you
shimmy.
talk about it a little
Yeah,
bit
I mean,
over
it's
the
just
years.
it's interesting too because
It's like that scene in Death
what?
Becomes Her when.
Oh, I love
when
that
they're
movie.
They're in a therapy session and they
she
go
goes-
around. They go around to Goldie Hawn's character and she's twisting the rag,
Fucking Goldie
and they're
Hawn.
all. Do you want to talk about anything? And she's all Madeline, and they're like, ah! They're like all screaming. Well, I was waiting for Anthony to be okay after challenges, and now he's okay, and it's the same. Oh my God, no. It's
yeah,
not.
I mean, I don't know what you just said, but what I was thinking of was
It's just like now you have it, and you're like, I need to do work. I think that's what
well,
you're
I
saying,
think
right?
You were being nice.
yeah.
Oh,
That was me screaming every time he mentioned Madeline.
I got you.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think was it Aristotle that said the wisest man knows he knows nothing?
I have no idea.
I think you should. I think you should continue the way that you are, no matter how much
Thanks.
time I give you. Because I
How
think
much
that-
time you give me?
No, how much time? How much of a hard time I might
Yeah,
give you,
yeah,
or
yeah.
whatever. Because I think the goal is to normalize, like celebrating. You know, the things that
I thought you were going to say normalize you being abusive.
You don't have to normalize that because it's already pretty normal.
You just owning where you're at.
Exactly. No, 'cause the worst-
Why did every time I look at you, I want to shimmy? I think
it's my shoulder.
That's what it is.
No, it's about knowing our worth. It's
Yeah,
about knowing
yeah.
our worth. Some of the things, something that I'm challenged with,
Yeah.
and not feeling like I need to make myself smaller.
I feel
to
that.
accommodate other people.
I love that. I
It's
love
a
that.
little bit of that, like waiting for the next shoe to drop,
What are you talking about? Would you mean like with
like questioning.
Lewis?
No,
Oh.
well, not to direct it just
the next
to you.
shoe's gonna drop
I
in
think
your ass.
I think oftentimes I can find myself, well, and less so. I think when I first got sober, it was a lot of just like, this can't be good for long. You know, like it'll be cute for a minute, but then everything's gonna go to shit. And it's like, it's sometimes it's gotten better as I've gotten older, but to just be like, no, it's nice and let it be nice.
Oh, I see what you're
Without being
saying.
afraid of like when it's not going to be nice.
Yeah, yeah. That's interesting because this is one of those examples where I've practiced the principles in all of my affairs. You know what I mean? Like, and that this is the first time that I've done that in a relationship where I'm like, I think I've talked about how like, he and I pray together and like we do step work together,
Gay.
not step work. Did you say gay?
Gay.
That's so funny because I used to say that in the beginning.
I love it.
Yeah. We would have like a tender moment and I'd be like gay.
So good.
But it's the first time where I've practiced the principles, which is like where I'm taking it one day at a time. I'm praying, I'm like turning things over and like centering God and all that other stuff.
Oh, Dad.
I tell you what. I tell you what I have experienced. Okay, so because of the work that I've done and how I feel about my recovery, I realized that there are certain things that I'm not willing to do or willing to compromise. I think that's what allows me to kind of be comfortable in not being in a relationship right now, because I realize that it's possible that I want to be monogamous, but right now I'm still in that selfish phase. I love my routine. I love how I've made recovery like so much a part of my life that like if you're gonna get with me, you're gonna have to if you want to be my lover, you gotta get with my recovery.
I'm not sure where I'm at with all that.
With what
personally? I think I just don't know. Like I feel like I'm holding myself back
from
like relationships. Like dating or sex even.
Yeah. I mean, you know what? I like being in a relationship, like romantic or platonic. I think that is like some of the hardest work that exists, like being in relationship with other humans and doing it in a way that's graceful. In a way that's, I don't feel like we don't like all of our training or like learning around being in relationship is passive. It's like it's through like witnessing. No one really teaches us how to be in relationship. I mean, I think 12-step begins to do that for a lot of us, but even then, there's and maybe that's just
and a big part of that is knowing yourself enough and being comfortable with yourself enough.
Know
I think you
thyself.
can also be open to the idea that there are other people too that have their own experience and perspectives as well.
Well, like being in
able to let
relationship.
them.
Yeah. Wait, what? Well, what do you mean? What do you mean? Like, what do you?
What?
Just in the sense that you were talking about how the program can help you with that, and I think a big part is coming to know yourself more and understand yourself more, so that when you are in relationship with another person, you're being authentic and honest and true, because
I see what you're saying.
You are in your best light, but then I think that also. Then you learn how to allow other people to have their own truth and their own perspective and their own experience, and learning how to work with those versus trying to smash one out for the other.
Yeah.
Speaking of sex, smash.
I was thinking that too. Like,
what that makes me think of is like the guy that goes smash, smash, smash. Who turned out to be a killer.
I don't know.
Like a murderer.
Do you know it?
No.
He was that surfer guy. He was like. He had like, there was this woman who was being robbed, and he came in and started hitting the guy in the head with like an axe. And then he ended up becoming super famous because he said these like kind words into the camera. There's like a whole documentary about it. Brandon, do you know what I'm talking about? No, you don't know what I'm talking about?
kind words to the camera.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
I have no idea.
Well, I think it's about that time.
I think that's a great place to end. Axe to the head.
I know, exactly.
Someone knows
Say some kind words into the mic.
Yeah.
Kind words.
We love you.
Yes. Bye.
Bye.